moving on, I suppose we'll stay with the German theme there. Not a defensive midfielder, although my last pick is a defensive midfielder. You can tell I was very conscious that I didn't want to pick all attacking players this time around. But it's a left back who's also in the Germany's under 21 Euro squad, who I've selected here. And it's David Raum, who is a 22-year-old left back who has 11 assists in the Zweite Bundesliga this season, which is a pretty standout figure. He's streets ahead of the competition in Germany, and he plays for Greuther Fürth, who sit fourth, I believe, with third place going into a relegation/promotion playoff, with 16th in the Bundesliga, as that is how the promotion relegation system works in Germany's top two tiers. But the top two, very much like the English Championship, go up automatically, and I think that it's very much still within the realms of possibility that Raum and Fürth could go up. But I know what you're thinking. 11 assists in the league, 14 assists in all competitions from left back. You're like, right, okay. Surely he's got to be getting signed in the summer. Well, it's too late, isn't it, Lee? Because Hoffenheim have beaten everybody to it. He signed a pre-contract with the Bundesliga club in January until 2025. And a free transfer for a player with 14 assists who's just 22. It's pretty good business. He's pretty versatile. He can play in multiple setups in a 4-3-1-2, which is predominantly how Fürth play, but occasionally in a 5-3-2 as well, which shows that he has that attacking license. And given his history in Fürth's youth setup, he has typically played as a left winger or a right winger, and occasionally, a very long time ago, but occasionally he was played as a centre forward. So he does have that license to get forward, and he doesn't feel overawed or gets into nosebleed territory when he gets over the halfway line. But Lee, I'm sure that you've seen sort of a few of his assists, and his numbers especially will have stood out to you. But I decided to sort of go into the assists by sort of the category that they'd fall into. And there were 8 passes, 5 crosses, 2 crosses which led to the opposition scoring on goals, which I thought was quite interesting, that happened on more than one occasion. And there was 1 throw-in that have given him his 14 assists this season, or rather 14 assists and then 2 crosses which led to own goals. There's a nice variety there, although at times I feel as though the 8 passes, a few of those, well, more than a few, were sort of the final pass rather than an assist, if that makes sense. It was like the attacker then still has a lot to do, but it still gets credited as a Raum assist. I don't know if that's something that you observed with sort of your watching of him.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that I had no idea that you could get an assist from a throw-in. That was new information for me.
Well, he threw it was a throw in. He basically just passed it. It was a bog standard throw in at the touchline, obviously, and the first player sort of spins around and then hits one from range, and yeah.
That's amazing.
If you want to class that as an assist, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I would take it.
he does have a long throw in his locker, that must
Yeah.
be said, but that wasn't it. That wasn't the occasion. So when I saw it listed as a throw in on Transfermarkt, and then I went and looked at it, I went, oh well, I was kind of expecting a bit of Rory Delap, the German
Yeah.
edition, but no, it wasn't. It was pretty bog standard.
I think that's always the fun thing when you talk about assists. I mean, you're right. You talk about them, and clubs place such a high value on simple information such as goals and assists, which is fine, but they don't always translate to goals per 90 or assists per 90, and they don't always look at expected goals per 90 and expected assists per 90. And I think that there are levels of information below just assists that some clubs would probably benefit in looking at. But saying that, I think that you're absolutely right in what you say, that he is a really interesting player in the attacking phase for his side. Greuther Fürth, I think it would be amazing if they were to be promoted this season. I think they've maybe held on to Raum for a little bit too long, and that's why he's been allowed to leave in a free transfer to Hoffenheim, because obviously he refused to sign a new contract and said he was leaving. Perhaps the club could have sold him 12 months earlier, but on the flip side, if they sold him, they might not currently be in a promotion fight. So, as a fan of the club, surely you would take the potential promotion with the fact that the player might leave in a free transfer. I think he's really interesting in that he does play in slightly different positions. He's very smart from left back and knowing when to be wide to provide width and when to come inside a little bit. And it's when he comes inside in those half spaces, as modern fullbacks tend to, it's when he comes in there that you see him making those passes that quite often end in goal opportunities or chance creation, because he's got the ability to find the feet of the striker. He doesn't mind trying to find the furthest line with a pass from those half spaces, as opposed to just looking to keep the ball moving from left to right, if you like, to try and keep pressure up. He's quite happy to be aggressive in possession, I think, is probably a good way to look at it. But he does have good vision in terms of when he does get up around the outside, because he is comfortable as a left winger as well as a left back, and obviously as a left wing back. So he's somebody that Hoffenheim, who quite often switch formation in games, and from game to game, is somebody who will be quite good for them. But he's capable of getting around the outside and making those connections. And you're right, it's interesting that two of his crosses have ended up in own goals, because that obviously suggests that he's putting the ball into areas of the box that are extremely dangerous, and that defenders have to try to defend aggressively when they're out of control, which obviously ends up in the own goal. It's completely the right time now for him to make the step up, and I think it's really interesting that he's chosen Hoffenheim to do that, because from a developmental level for a 22-year-old to go to Hoffenheim, you could see him play there for 2 years and then move on to a Champions League caliber German club if he keeps up this kind of output.
Yeah, certainly that is one of the trajectories that I think we could definitely see Raum on. And quite fittingly, in Germany's opening under 21 Euros game against Hungary, he did in fact get an assist. So very much staying with the theme. So I think that must be 15 assists all competitions, club and country, for him this season. Which I know we're getting sort of caught up on it, but I mean it is a very standout figure.
Yeah.
And you know I mean. I know I said that the caveat about a lot of his past assists are sort of final passes, but there are one thing I will say about a few of them is that they are creative. They're often incisive passes. It's him getting into areas which your traditional left back, one who's perhaps less comfortable playing wider, less comfortable going around the outside, just simply wouldn't take up those spaces. And yeah, completely agree with what you're saying about the own goals that have arisen from Raum crosses, because if you put the ball into the corridor of uncertainty, then you've got defenders there who are thinking, right, I need to get rid of this because there's a striker on my shoulder, and it forces them into making a decision. And not all of the time it pays off for the defense, as we've seen this season with Greuther Fürth.